Today, as I stand here representing my community, the power of community healing, the resilience deeply embedded in our people, especially among women, and the strength of advocacy. I urge each one of you to consider your role in this struggle, to join us in breaking the silence and shining a light on the Rohingya crisis, and in demanding that the world respond to the plight of forced migration, not with indifference, but with action. Together, we can change the narrative.
Hello and welcome to the DVB Newsroom. I'm Nora. I am joined in studio by Noor Azizah, the co-founder of the Rohingya Maiyafuinor Collaborative Network, a group of Rohingya women leaders advocating for human rights, education, peace and security. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me about the Rohingya Maiyafuinor Collaborative Network?
Of course.
When was it founded and who are its members?
Yeah, so Rohingya Maiyafuinor Collaborative Network is a refugee-led, Rohingya-led, women-led organization. Maiyafuinor just means women in our language. So essentially it means Rohingya Women's Collaborative Network. And we instilled that in order to combat cultural erasure and to ensure that our language is always embedded wherever we go and whatever work that we do. We were established last year, so it's been a year and a little bit. We started off with 5 Rohingya women, diaspora women from Canada, from New Zealand, from the United States, and I myself based in Australia. We went on mission to Aceh, Indonesia to visit our brothers and sisters that are living in the refugee camps there. And we had interviews with the women, the men and the children, and we took back their concerns to Jakarta in Indonesia in order to shift narrative and structural policies in the region. Today, a year and a little bit later, we are a team of 8. We are growing slowly, and most of the women from our organization are based in the US. Again, I'm the only one in Australia, but we are looking to increase our membership. And part of the work that we do is we train young Rohingya girls to do the work for community. And we also visit our people that are currently displaced in ASEAN and beyond.
So you have recently written an editorial for DVB English News on your international advocacy for the Rohingya and refugee women. How did you come to this point in your life?
I resettled in Australia about 21 years ago. So I was still a child. I was 8 years and a half. I faced the issues of displacement, violence, and so on as a refugee in Malaysia for a very long time prior to resettlement. We obviously didn't have the safety and the status of legalization in Malaysia, but after resettlement, we were able to have an identity, a passport, and be with a very small Rohingya community in Sydney. We knew that that freedom we retrieved was something we didn't feel for a very long time. But the freedom that we felt was not complete because we know that our people are not free. There are currently 2.8 million Rohingya dispersed worldwide, and only 1% of the 2.8 million live with peace, identity, and safety. So as I knew that my people are currently struggling, I started working for my community at quite a young age in Sydney, and then eventually stepping onto the international fora to work on structural issues and working on the future of democratization of Burma, Myanmar.
So, can you tell us more about your own personal story? How did your family escape Myanmar?
Sure. So I was born in the 90s in Arakan, known as Rakhine State of Burma, Myanmar. And in the 90s, there were waves of violence against the Rohingya. My parents, alongside their 5 children, I was the youngest one, we had to flee because they did not see a future for their family. We left with absolutely nothing. We walked through the dense jungles of Southeast Asia. We took every transportation possible, every mode of transportation possible. We hid for a very long time. We took the boat and we ended up on a very small island in Sabah, Malaysia. And in Sabah, Malaysia, we lived there. I lived there as a refugee for the first 8 years and a half of my life. And in Malaysia, we thought we would find a safe home. But I spent a very long time there hiding from the police, very afraid of being detained or sent away. I spent a long time hiding in the jungles of Sabah with some really special people that kept me alive and safe. And in 2003, in October, the Australian government granted my family and I asylum, and we resettled in Australia.
Yeah. For your family, are there any challenges that continue even in a new country?
You know, resettlement is something that Rohingya are grateful for. Obviously, there are issues that comes with it, new culture, new language. I myself didn't speak English until I got to Australia. The first time I came to Australia, I was placed in a grade 3 class, and late grade 3, where I didn't know how to read, I didn't know how to write. It was the first time I saw school. So integration is definitely something that is quite difficult. But then Rohingya, the community in Sydney, we have our own shops, we have our own businesses. So wherever we are, we want to contribute meaningfully to the community.
So you're currently in Thailand to deliver a keynote speech at the Beyond Borders conference in Chiang Mai. What did you discuss?
I spoke about the issues of Rohingya displacement, and given that the audience were all reporters, I spoke about meaningful reporting without just ticking a box. The Rohingya crisis is still ongoing. We're seeing an influx of refugees fleeing new waves of violence that we've seen in the last few months. We've seen more than 45,000 Rohingya flee and cross the Naf River. So I spoke about the importance of sharing our story, but beyond sharing our story, holding governments accountable that are allowing this to occur, and the need for protection for Rohingya that are in the ASEAN region looking for a new home.
Do you think more platforms like Beyond Borders could make a global impact?
Absolutely. You know, Rohingya women are always pushed away from work like this. And when we are given this space, it's quite meaningful, and it's really important because there are millions of Rohingya girls. You know, the refugee camp in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, nearly 75% are women and children. So it is really important that we have platforms like that to share our plights and our stories.
Yeah. The last time you were in Chiang Mai, the network held a Rohingya cultural night. How was it?
It was really incredible. We had a cultural night where we shared our food. We cooked for more than 100 audience, and we shared our documentary on our mission to Indonesia and Malaysia. We had the team. The team was 4 of us to speak on the issues that we are currently working on, and we showcased our friend Greg Constantine's work of Ekhale, of Rohingya Belonging. He's been collecting Rohingya Belonging archives of what it looks like in the last 20 years from different Rohingya groups, diaspora in the camps and beyond. So it was quite a meaningful and special night to have that space, and we built a lot of solidarity amongst different ethnic groups from Burma as well, and for them to understand our plight, and for us to also come together to see what the future Burma is actually going to look like.
Sure. Are there any other initiatives you're planning to help preserve Rohingya culture and identity?
Absolutely. So we've been using the cultural night quite a fair bit. We've had cultural events in Chiang Mai, in Bangkok, in Malaysia, Indonesia. I just had one in Sydney recently where I partnered with MSF. And this is just a nice way to showcase to people that what you see on TV is the current issues, but we are also people. We are humans with our own language, with our own culture that's been ongoing for a very long time. Sure. And to show the humanity of the side of Rohingya is so special.
Sure. Yeah. So you've also spent time in Malaysia and Indonesia meeting with Rohingya refugees there. What were your experiences?
So last year in August, we went to Indonesia, in Aceh specifically, and there was one refugee camp, and because of new violence in the last year, there are now 7 camps that are closed. We wanted to visit our community and to make sure that they don't feel like they are forgotten. Indonesia and Malaysia often becomes a blind spot. When we think of Rohingya, we think of Bangladesh, hosting the largest refugee camp in the world, 1 million Rohingya. And we wanted to make sure our people don't feel forgotten. We wanted to also highlight the issues, the gendered impact of this crisis. And we had meetings with our women and our children, and all they asked for was the basic. They wanted education for their children because they know that this would improve the future of their children. And in Malaysia, we went there this year as a team. And, going back to Malaysia was a bit of a bittersweet moment for me because I myself have lived refugee experience. And going back there, it was traumatizing, to be honest. And also incredible because I got to meet with women from my community. They spoke about some of the issues living there. As you know, Malaysia is not part of the 1951 Refugee Convention. Therefore, Rohingya do not have the protection. The women spoke about the issues of medical fees, the exorbitant fees. There was one story that really not touched us, that really broke our heart. There was one Rohingya woman, she was heavily pregnant and she went to the clinic and she was ready to give birth. She told the doctor she needed to give birth, the receptionist, and they asked her for 5,000 ringgit as a deposit. And obviously she did not have these funds, and we can't expect refugees fleeing a genocide to have this fund available. So they left her in front of the clinic and her unborn baby died. And this is one story of many Rohingya currently living in Malaysia. So we took back their concerns again. We met with people in Parliament in Malaysia, NGOs, civil society, and brought back their voices to see if we can have some shift of change through the protection that we have. As being part of that 1%, we have the protection from our respective countries. So we're hoping that we can see some change while we wait to go back home in Burma.
What do you think are the most urgent issues facing the Rohingya community in Myanmar today?
There is ethnic cleansing happening for a very long time, 82 years now if we look at it. But now we're seeing a polycrisis where there are ethnic armed groups also conducting killings and genocide. And impunity is still there for them. And in order for Rohingya to go back home, we need Rohingya voices to be part of the democratic process. And we've seen the democratic process in Burma fail Rohingya already. And we don't want that to happen again. So we need to be part of the decision-making process, and we also need to hold all perpetrators accountable.
Okay. So are there regional allies or organizations who could help address these urgent issues?
In the last few months, the first people to respond to the Rohingya fleeing the violence in Arakan, we thought it was going to be big organizations, but we were actually the first one. So Rohingya Maiyafuinor Collaborative Network were able to provide humanitarian aid to more than 1,000 Rohingya families fleeing the genocide in Arakan. So for me, it was quite heartbreaking because we are expecting large organizations to step up and provide these aids, these life-saving aids to our people. So essentially, it was the Rohingya refugees gathering, putting money together, whatever taka they had, to feed our community. We've always been a collective community when violence do occur. We come together and we help each other out. So I think it's really important to support refugee-led and Rohingya-led organizations that are already doing the essential work in life-saving skills for our people.
So do you feel the international community is doing enough to support the Rohingya in Rakhine State?
No, absolutely not. Nearly every panel that I speak on, whether it be at the UN, whether it be in Europe, the panel is usually nicknamed as the forgotten crisis. And it's quite saddening to see that, because then we remain forgotten. So we need the international community to step up. But besides the international community, we need public support. As you know, there is misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech spreading in Southeast Asia against Rohingya, borrowing the languages of the military junta, claiming us as animal-like, too black, and we're seeing racism, colorism, and this is manifesting to physical violence. So we need the international community to step up, and we need public support more than anything.
Okay. How does the network empower women and children?
I feel like Rohingya women and children are already empowered, and they're already so resilient. They've gone through such atrocities, and yet when, our women, they flee from Arakan to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh, they know there are no hopes there because there's no opportunities. So of course they're going to jump on a boat thinking that they'll have a better life in Indonesia and Malaysia. So when they do arrive, they're not met with love right now, given the hate speech that is spreading in Indonesia. But what we are doing is we're providing support to our women and children. In Indonesia, we're supporting 81 unaccompanied children, Rohingya children, that have witnessed their parents drown during that sea journey. We're providing them with psychosocial support because we see that that's extremely urgent. We're providing our women with skills in the camps with ICT lessons. We're funding for our younger children to have lessons because there's no education in the camp. We've been able to buy some books for them to also read. So we know that that's temporary, but whatever we can do to make their lives a little bit easier while they are in the region.
So, are there skill building programs or workshops provided by the network?
Of course, yeah, definitely. Especially for Rohingya women that are wanting to do human rights work for the community. We have a process of onboarding, and we like to give them their own agency. So we all have different directorial statements in our leadership. So we have a director in health, a director in education, and so on. And it's skill-based and also based on what they'd like to do for the community.
What has been the most rewarding part of your journey since you became involved in activism and advocacy?
Meeting my Rohingya sisters has been so incredible. Doing the work, I've been doing this for nearly 10 years now. And at the beginning, it was very lonely. I didn't really have anyone to lean on. And then I met Maiyafuinor, that's based in Canada. And I was such a big fan of hers and seeing, wow, there's like Rohingya women doing work for the community. And then now we have the Rohingya sisters, 8 of us, doing work for the community. So I guess the biggest reward for me is building this sisterhood and this relationship with women that have gone through similar atrocities and violence that I have, and also re-healing and rebuilding our community.
It is very exhausting. How do you stay resilient?
I take time to look after myself. I'm only human. I like to do things like reading, hiking, and having some quiet time by myself. So it's definitely exhausting and it's hard work, but it's the least that I can do for my community.
So you're now living in Australia. How do you raise awareness about the plight of the Rohingya and what the US has labeled a genocide against them in your home country?
Yes. So in Australia, I'm part of the refugee advisory panel that's part of the Australian government. So we utilize the connections that we have with governments, with different member states that also support the Rohingya. The US and Canada both have genocide determination for Rohingya. So we were actually in Canada this year as well, where we had a press conference in Parliament on the work that we're doing and the issues that we are seeing. And we also hold the cultural nights that we spoke about earlier to have a bit of a fun way to also showcase our plight, because we've seen the classic panel where we have different groups of people coming to speak on a panel, and it gets a little bit tiring and boring. And we had to spice it up and change it up, and we said, let's have a cultural night where we actually wear Rohingya clothes with pride. We use 2 of our documentaries that we have. So this has been quite a successful way to showcase our plight and also speak about the challenges of our plight.
Well, before we wrap up, is there any final message you would like to share?
Please continue to support the Rohingya people. the violence has only escalated. It has not stopped. The Rohingya genocide has not ended. So we need support from everyone, and we need to continue speaking about it until we can go back home safely.
Thank you for joining me in the DVB newsroom and sharing your powerful story. Your work for Rohingya communities is truly inspiring.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.